Siri is probably the most disappointing product in the history of capitalism.
700 engineers were the algorithm. This is like the Wizard of Oz.
What does Ryan Reynolds know about API requests?
One of the influencers was like, thank you so much for all the stuff you're doing on deportation. Uber drivers where I live finally speak English again.
Yo, everyone, welcome back. Brand new Techish. It is me, Michael Behane, the CEO of Pocket and Pocket Jobs, and I am with
Abadesi, CEO of Hustle Crew.
Okay, first story we got to talk about. Apparently, AI does not stand for artificial intelligence. It stands for actually Indian. And the reason why I say that is because there's been a few companies now that have been exposed to not actually be AI companies. They basically have said they are AI first, said they've got the technology under the hood, but actually they've got cheap labor from overseas, primarily from India, which is hence why it's known as actual India. And there's been another major case. So Builder.ai claimed that they could help you build a website with no code. They had this assistant called Natasha. They raised about $450 million, including from Microsoft. They got to a $1.5 billion valuation. And it turns out the whole thing was fugazi. It wasn't real. They had 700 engineers based in India writing code behind the scenes. And they've now been exposed. They're now under investigation. There's another scam that they were running where they were inflating their revenue by basically passing revenue from one company to another, where essentially, hypothetically speaking, Pocket would give Hustle Crew 20K as revenue. Then you would send me back 20K as revenue for Pocket, and then all of a sudden we've got massively high ARR or annual recurring revenue. We go to our investors and say, hey, give us money at this valuation because we're worth this amount of money because we have done this amount of revenue. So the whole thing is fugazi, and this is not the first time this has happened. So obviously Amazon, I talked about this with an episode with Dominic, their whole just walk out technology where you could walk into the supermarket. I've used it actually. You walk in and you walk out. That was meant to be all machine learning, fancy AI tech. Turns out it was people in India watching you on CCTV and then charging you at a later date. What is going on? Let's break this down, yeah, because like this is not our first time watching fakery go down. We saw the .com bubble where everyone was putting .com at the end of their name, claiming that they were a website, claiming that, and then also actually the crypto one, there was a lot of people saying that they were blockchain first, saying whatever they could, as many buzzwords as possible to get a valuation.
Internet of Things.
What is your thinking about this whole situation?
700 engineers were behind the proprietary AI. 700 engineers were the algorithm. This is like the Wizard of Oz. You remember that movie, The Wizard of Oz? Or like if you've seen Wicked, where there's like this magical guy and then it's actually just like a machine and a person. Do you know what? This again just illustrates the problematic nature of the startup game in terms of how loose people are encouraged to be with the truth, right? You inherently sell a vision. And that's what it's about, right? Like you don't have to be there. You just have to get there. And hopefully you get there before anyone notices. I mean, I'm thinking of like the startups I've worked at, and there was always a gap, a distortion between what we said was capable and what we actually did. There's a certain, one person's scam is another person's finesse. One person's lies is another person's, scheming. Fake it till you make it. And I remember when I first started Hustle Crew and I wanted to build this career platform for women in tech. I wanted to bring the most relevant resources to you, right? I'm looking for a job. I want a pay rise. I want a promotion. And no one was interested in my deck until I called it an AI-powered curation platform. The minute I called it an AI-powered curation platform.
You were the OG fraudster. Because I actually remember, as soon as you started the story, I was like, oh yeah, you were claiming that you were building an AI-first platform.
Yeah.
Oh
exactly.
Lord, this story could have been you. This could have been you. This could have been you.
Hang on a minute. Lord. I did not get a 1.5 billion valuation though. Can we just, for the record, I did not take 450 million.
Because you failed.
I could have been Elizabeth Holmes.
You could have been the subject of Techish.
No, but the thing is, I like to think that I would have made the product before I got busted, before I ran out of money. So for example, the AI faking is one thing. This whole round tripping scam where you send money to another company, they send the money back, you both fake how much revenue you're making. I mean, that I would never do. I never even knew you could do. Had you heard of this before this story?
But it makes complete sense because, you're pitching to VCs, and the higher your revenue number, the better. And yeah, if you've got a homie at another company and you both want to kind of win together, I can see people doing it. And maybe this is more common than we realize. I think there's a chance it might be. I have a feeling, because sometimes you look at companies, you're like, how have you guys got to $100 million in revenue in about 12 months? Like, that make sense? Like, I don't know, but I'm not accusing anybody. Obviously, I'm just saying allegedly. But I'm just saying, to me, it wouldn't surprise me if this is far more common than you realize, because all of the incentives are there. All of the incentives are there.
Yeah.
Like, cash. Because actually, when we first started doing startups, this whole selling secondary shares, it wasn't as prevalent. But so now, technically speaking, you can get rich before you go public, before you're acquired, before anybody
Like
really
the
needs to
Hopin founder.
exactly. Before, I mean, he's obviously completely legitimate, but I mean, in the sense that you can get rich before anyone does massive due diligence, just because you're selling to these investors who are clamoring, who are greedy. Whereas when you sell to a company like JP Morgan, when they bought the Frank, and it was a fake product.
The Forbes 30 under 30 scammer.
Yeah. So she basically had a fake product, had fake users, sold it to JP Morgan. And then once they had acquired it, they realized, oh, this is actually fake. There's no users here, right? But your VC is not going to do that. Your VC is not coming into the office and say, let me have a look at the user base. Let me have a look at this. Let me have a look at that, right? They just want to get in and around. So all of the incentives are there now. And this is why I think it's a lot more common, than it probably once was. That's just my conjecture. Maybe it was always common, but I feel like
so why didn't I was just going to say, why didn't the Builder.ai founders get out quick enough? Like, what was the first domino to fall? Because they obviously got pretty far, right? What was the first domino to fall and then led to this, collapse?
I think you can only push it so far. So I don't know what the actual instigating factor was, but it looks like it could have been a leak. It could have been a whistleblower. Apparently, there was internal documents urging employees to push the AI narrative and hide the human labor part of it. Obviously, they probably couldn't raise enough money in enough time, and then they had to lay off staff as well. So I guess you can only go so far. Like, it's very difficult to keep this going forever. And is the founder wealthy? I think he probably is. He probably did cash out. You don't get to $1.5 billion valuation without you personally trying to find a way to get money in your own pockets. You know what I mean? You're not walking around, as a pauper when your company's worth that much, right? There's ways now of getting cash out of the business without directly getting cash out of the business. If you watch the WeWork movie, We Crashed, you see a scene where like he goes in, the CEO of WeWork, Adam Newman, goes into the bank and is like, listen, I need $100 million. They're like, I'm sorry, sir, we can't do that. And he's like, just Google me. And they Google him. They're like, oh, okay, we'll get you into the top guys. So the top guys give him a line of credit of $100 million just based on WeWork's valuation that ended up going to zero anyway, basically, right? So he probably might have had a similar situation. So he probably has built wealth fraudulently, allegedly. Let's see what the investigation finds, but it's crazy.
When you said how employees were encouraged to downplay the human aspects and lean into the AI, I started thinking about times where, again, in startups that I worked at, part of sipping the Kool-Aid or believing in the values was sort of amplifying a story that wasn't necessarily true. Like, for example, when I was at Groupon, one of the things that merchants, so the businesses running Groupon deals, always took issue with was the fact that we charged 50% commission. And we took the VAT out of their half, not out of our half. So on every Groupon, right, let's say you're selling a £20 cut and blow dry, you think you're going to get £10. Actually, you're going to get £10 less VAT. So we get £10, but you were getting £7.50. And this was, of course, like heartbreaking for most people once they did the math, because they're like, oh, wait, well, then I would have run the deal for £22. And we had all these like phrases and words that we would use to, make sure that the deal went ahead. And one of the big things for us, and Groupon is still around, right? So, I mean, it's obviously giving value to businesses, but we always used to talk about how, it's all about the editorial, we're giving them a free ad campaign, giving them free branding, all these things that made the commission worth it. And, whether or not we always believed that was the case with every single deal we did is like a whole nother thing, And even with commission, I remember when we then started having to do lower commission because it was the only way we were going to get more competitive brands on the platform or get more brands on the platform. Merchants would be like, oh, I heard from so-and-so that their commission is less. And we would just have to be like, no, we have a standard commission. And I was like, hey, now we are lying. Right? Like, but, it's the ethics of capitalism. They're murky AF.
So first, Hustle Crew was built on fraud, and now this is... I'm joking, I'm playing.
Excuse me.
That's a joke, I'm just joking. Abadesi is a legitimate entrepreneur.
See what the internet will clip up and watch them come for me. If I go missing, it's your fault.
Yeah, but you know what? I think I'm gonna defend Amazon actually because I think I remember reading about their walkout technology and
Yeah, because they
basically
need your defense.
yeah, basically. But their walkout technology was like it worked. It worked like 40% of the time. It's just that basically they needed the humans to double check and then do it when it didn't work, basically the 60% of the time. And they were hoping that okay, we get to the point where that number increases. And then when they realized that number wasn't increasing, they actually shut down the business, right? They realized this is not gonna work, right? So at
Mm.
least in Amazon's case, it was like we're doing fake it till you make it. We're hoping the technology gets there. We're investing ahead, and then it didn't work. Okay, cool. We were gonna walk away. Whereas I think with Builder and
Abandoned.
then and like with Theranos, for example, it just became one lie after the other, and there was never any indication that this was gonna make sense or tell the truth.
What I
Okay,
don't
cool.
understand
Go on.
is, sorry, I just want to get into the mind of these people just a little bit because I am just like fascinated by it. See, like if I play a game like Secret Hitler or Resistance, whatever, like I know I'm lying, right? I know that
Okay.
I'm like intentionally deceiving people. But when you get to that level of this is the reality in which you are operating with, this is the job that you are spending 50 to 60 hours a week, probably even more, 70, 80, God knows how many hours. Do you start to believe the lie? Like when you see the money coming in from one company and then that you know is fake and then you're sending it back, you're like, this is just what I need to do. This is normal. Everyone does this. Everyone knows it. Like there must have been one investor that knew, one advisor that knew. Like you're telling me that you just have these founders operating in darkness, lying to everyone around them, even lying to themselves. Like no, they must believe that what they're doing is justified in some way because there must be like enough people around them making them feel that the action is justified. Am I making
I don't.
sense?
Yeah, you make complete sense. I don't think they believe the lie. They know that what they're doing is a lie, but they believe in the motives that eventually we're going to get there, and eventually this is going to make sense, and
Mm.
eventually maybe the technology will work. Because there is when he launched, because this is quite an old company, it's not relatively new. It was launched. I haven't got the launch date, but it's not like there isn't a possibility now that you can have apps built by
Mm.
code. You know what I mean? Built by AI. So it's completely plausible. And I think he thought
Yeah.
we're gonna get there.
2016 it was founded and then they launched the
Okay,
platform in 2018.
that makes complete sense because at that time there were no real large language models available to the public and available for
Mm.
API access. So they probably at the time were like, we're gonna get there when the technology is there, we'll catch up to tech. So actually now it probably could have worked. You can use LLMs to build apps and whatever, right? Replit does it basically as well. You can vibe code a whole bunch of stuff. So I think that's what they thought. We'll catch up to the tech and get there. But
Mm.
they just told so many lies along the way and they lost track of what was ethical and what was truthful. Because
But I mean the
I
round tripping
think
thing,
the round tripping thing,
sending fake money and fake invoices. Come
you
on.
justify it to yourself by saying we need to demonstrate this revenue so that eventually we can make this revenue. That's how you justify it. You say, listen, we need to just do this to get to step B, and then we can justify it, whatever, whatever. But I do think I remember going to university and seeing people cross lines that I didn't think was right. Whether that
What, like
was
cheating?
cheating, paying people to do the work for them. People used to ask me to do work for them for money. I'll be like, no, I'm not involved. I ain't got
Well,
time
I
for that
mean, come on,
anyways.
that's how we survive.
Oh, but this is what I'm saying. Abadesi, you're not looking good in this episode. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is all jokes, by the way. I hope. But yeah, hey, let me check the Techish account, bro. What you doing? What you doing, bro? What you doing? I'm joking, anyways.
There's
No,
something called collaborative teamwork, though, at university. Like, not every problem set was 100% my
but what I'm saying
thoughts.
to you is, I don't think
Teamwork.
anybody felt morally conflicted about doing those things. I think they just thought, listen, I'm trying to get to my exam results. I want to get my coursework. Let me just
Mm.
get to the next step, whatever, right? And if you come from that world, the next step is when you go to raise money for your startup, you almost feel like it's like that sort of academic thing again, where you just need to get to the next level. I need to just pass this exam and then we get to the next
Mm.
exam. Then eventually it will all work out. And I feel like there's a part of it that's like that. I feel like there's certain people and certain mindsets in the kind of upper class that go to the great universities, that go to then do a startup, where that mindset of by any means necessary, it's there, and they don't think of it as wrong. They don't think of it as unethical. I think they just think of it as like, well, this is what you've got to do. This is how you win. What would interest me is to know who's got away with this, because I'm sure there are people that have gotten away with this. Because we see the famous cases of people that have been caught, Frank, Theranos, this person, whatever. But I'm sure there are people that
Mm.
have walked away, because I have a feeling that some of these people, when they're talking about this, are like, well, actually, so and so did it and they got away with it. So let's just, we can figure it out too.
I mean, the thing that I thought about was the Bayesian super yacht. that sank.
Okay, explain that one. Explain that one.
Oh God, don't put me on the spot like this. Okay, I'm gonna
I
have
don't
to
know
do
what it
some
is.
research in real time. But basically, Mike Lynch sold a company. So he's like one of the biggest British tech tycoons.
Okay.
And he was in a lawsuit for ages because he
I remember
sold
this
his
now, yeah.
company to Hewlett Packard.
And what was the issue? They were claiming what? Go on.
They claimed that Mike Lynch overvalued his company. They felt that there was some intentional accounting that was done to inflate the sale price. And they felt that they overpaid. And he always made the argument that they had buyer's remorse. Like all the due diligence had been done, and what they had was buyer's remorse, and that was on them, not him and the company. Right. So that was like the basis of the argument. And this trial went on for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages and ages and ages. And then finally was resolved and he was free to go. And then, of course, there's this freak accident, and the yacht dies. And unfortunately, him and his daughter and a bunch of other people died. And the crew members are on trial now for misconduct or whatever. But
damn,
that's like one case, because obviously, like, conspiracy theories were going wild because the same day that he died, his business partner also died in a motorcycle accident.
No, are you serious?
Or a car accident? Yeah. Wait, hang on now. Got a mic check this.
Because if that is the case, that's not even a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
That's fact. They got whacked by the Hewlett Packard mafia.
Okay, here we go. So yeah, he was hit by a car while running. His business partner.
100% whacked.
On the 17th of August, and then on the 19th of August, the yacht sank. So the two men that. Yeah.
100% they both got whacked. Oh my lord. Anyways, let me not get in trouble. Because I don't want to get whacked. Hewlett Packard, I respect you as a company. I love you very much. But yeah, that's crazy. No. You can't have two freak accidents in that close proximity, in it, man. No, don't insult my intelligence. All right, cool. Next story I wanted to talk about was the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference, WWDC, which they do all the time every year. And I think that's where Steve Jobs used to do like his famous announcements and announce the iPhone, whatever. So he's obviously legendary. And I do have to say, actually, one of the most annoying legacies of Steve Jobs is watching every CEO think they need to do a keynote speech. I remember seeing...
Thank you.
Like, even when Airbnb does it, I'm like, why are you guys doing a keynote speech for software? It doesn't even make sense. It's a software product. Just let me just use the software. Why you got to do an announcement where you're walking on stage and you're like, look, you can now filter for housing like this. It's like, guys, this only really works with like physical devices here. Make it make sense. And then even there was a conference that Postman, which is like an API tool, and you use it to kind of test your APIs, whatever. They had a conference and Ryan Reynolds was speaking. I was like, what does Ryan Reynolds know about API requests? Why is there a conference and a speaking and for this? And why is the CEO doing? Anyways, so Apple.
Well, that's obvious because you're going to get in the press. Why else would the press report on it? But you bring someone famous, maybe you'll get picked up. Attention.
I mean, it works because Airbnb get a lot of press whenever they do their kind of like, you know, their version of this as well. But I'm also just like, make it make sense. It's a bit like, I don't get it. But so Apple came out and listen, I think the feedback has been quite poor. So they are now announcing this whole liquid glass design. Essentially, it's kind of like a see-through UI. Say I'm on Instagram and then you text me. It will no longer be like a gray bubble with my text above on the notification. It will be like a see-through UI. And obviously, one, I don't know how readable it is. Two, I don't know what the point of this is. Three, why is Apple announcing this like this is a big deal? Then also on the other part where people are a bit upset is that like Apple Intelligence, which is meant to be their AI product, they announced that like a year ago at the previous event and nothing's happened. Nothing's been launched. There's been no changes. And what I've seen on Twitter is Apple has launched a few studies showing that large language models are actually quite dumb and they don't necessarily have that much intelligence when you push them to their thresholds. My thesis is that Apple thought, okay, let's partner with OpenAI, which is what they were originally intended to do. Let's make Siri smart. Because Siri is probably the most disappointing product in the history of capitalism. Like Siri is terrible. I hate Siri. Siri disappoints me like, you know what I'm saying? Like nothing, innit? And I think they thought, okay, we'll just plug in a large language model and it'll be great. And they realized that actually these large language models are very dumb and that actually Apple Intelligence is not going to be around for a while because actually in order to release this to 1 billion iPhone users, it has to be perfect and it's never going to be perfect for a very long time. And there was an interview where I'm going to put the clip in, but essentially there was a reporter and she took them to task. And it was it wasn't Tim Cook, it was like the head of software engineering at Apple. And he looked like a chastised schoolboy. She was like, but it's not good though, is it? But the product doesn't work, does it? But you promised us last year.
Siri should be as good, if not better, than the competition.
Oh, I think ultimately it should be.
That's
but
certainly,
it's not right now.
That's certainly our mission.
And you don't see tech executives often spoken to in that way, because a lot of times they're talking in fluff, they're dancing around it, they're PR trained. And I think that was pleasurable to watch, because I was like, yeah, like, guys, you're messing up here. I mean, listen, Apple's fine. They're a bajillion-dollar company. They'll be completely fine.
I was gonna say, didn't they like beat their last earnings report?
I think Tim Cook is a master at revenue. He's a master at operations. He's a master at profitability. But I still feel like he has made money operating off Steve Jobs' playbook. I feel like Steve Jobs rolled the boulder up the hill and then he just pushed it down. But now it's like, where is the new innovation? Where is the new products? Like the VR headset's a flop. You know, you haven't got anything in AI. The iPhone has stayed the same for 20 years, basically. Most people are not upgrading because there's no point anymore. But revenue goes up because actually they find a way through services, through, you know, through other ways to juice revenue. But yeah, I don't know.
Developer store. I mean, I personally think that there should be a conversation about what innovation looks like when it's not just in the product sphere, and like what innovation looks like culturally. You know what I mean? Like, what about like cultural innovation, and like, how do we measure the value of that? You know, to his credit, he's like one of the few CEOs who, you know, when Trump came into power and everyone was doing the DEI backlash, I mean, obviously he's like openly out, but so are other people who are very like conservative with a small c, right? And he was like, no, we're not going to change our stance on this. This is still a core part of our cultural values. This is definitely like what we care about. And yeah, I mean, I think we're so obsessed with innovating, having something new, but we kind of forget what the cost of innovation is, not just from like the human capital perspective, right? Like burnout and all the other things related to like overworking people and underfunding people. A lot of the lack of innovation, as I've said on the show before, also comes from the fact that tech is a meritocracy. So you just have like the same friggin' tech bros patting themselves on the back, circle jerking the same boring ideas, making another crypto wallet, crypto coin no one asked for. Thank you very much. But I think there's also like, what's the cost of innovation? Like, do we really need a new device? Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, why is there like a 3-sided Z Fold screen? I don't understand, when like gorillas are an endangered animal in the forest where they mine for the glass and the liquid crystals that go into our devices. Like, we need to decide where we stand on this, you know, debate, because it's like, if you want constant innovation, like what, for the sake of innovation, just for the sake of it? They're rich, like you said, they have a high market cap, they're making a lot of money, their reputation feels secure and sound, and why do we need to like push them to do more when like the planet's effed? I don't get
But
it.
I mean, it's not, if they came with that energy and said, listen, we're not innovating because of X, Y, and Z, we believe that, you know, we're pushing the ecology of the earth.
Obviously.
No, but if they, but even if they actually believed it deep down, let's say we found some emails and they believe that, I would say, okay, fair enough. But they are trying to innovate.
Sell your shit.
I mean, nah, I don't know. But they are trying to actually innovate. They are actually trying to push the company forward, and they're failing to do so on their own terms. So I'm only criticizing them on their own set expectation, which is that Apple is meant to be this magical company that has the best products in the world. And right now they're failing at their own set objective.
Oh, I think that's harsh. What about AirPods? People love AirPods. You have like 15 pairs of AirPods. Like, they're
only
doing
because I
like
lose them.
in-ear noise cancellation. No, and like the voice technology with AirPods is like pretty cool. Like, you know, fine. Like they're not having an AirPods every year, but I still say they're like doing pretty well. Apple TV, that's a great device. I'm into it.
I think you're on the Apple payroll. I think that's what's going on here right now.
I'm just defending Tim Cook. I
mean, listen, Tim Cook was also at Trump's inauguration. It's not as if like he's been like throwing up the black power fist and saying F Trump and he's at the protest. He's still like very much within that kind of tech MAGA world. He's just basically held the line on certain things that he believes in, right? And I've been reading this book actually called Apple in China. And basically the book is about essentially how much obviously Apple has invested in China and how much Apple is essentially screwed, in the sense that like Trump's tariffs have really hurt them, and that Apple has been quite short-sighted in their massive investment in China, in the sense that one, they have put in more money than the entire Marshall Plan every year. So the Marshall Plan was the amount of money the US government gave to Europe to help rebuild Europe after the Second World War. But in terms of what Apple has invested into, you know, building the warehouses, training the workers, they've trained millions of workers in how to use these sort of high technology products, which is great. I have no qualms in that. But then those people have then left and gone to work at Alibaba or BYD or, you know, all other kind of rival competitive companies, which I don't have a problem with. But like, if you're somebody who cares about kind of the whole US-China dynamic, like Apple has essentially kind of, I wouldn't say betrayed their country, but like they've basically, for their own greed and their own desire to improve their profit margins, have, through backdoors allowed valuable US tech to go overseas to essentially what is now an adversary, which I hope isn't the case. I don't want to see obviously war and stuff.
But that's not
But it's just
unique to Apple. It's not like Microsoft or all these other people aren't manufacturing in China as well. Like most things are manufactured outside the US. They might be assembled in the US, but like everything from like microprocessors to whatever else in the drive is like made abroad, right? So why is that just Apple?
because Apple, the scale of Apple is one thing. So they make 1 billion phones, basically, or a crazy amount of phones. The cutting edge technology, obviously. So Microsoft obviously doesn't produce laptops. Microsoft has their software, and they have done like Surface tablet and tried to go into hardware.
Well, where's
whatever,
like a
right?
Pixel made? Where's a Pixel made?
Well, a Google Pixel probably is made in China, but I don't think a Google Pixel is also at the scale of an iPhone. Samsung probably does their own in-house and probably works with China as well, but that's Korea is not America, right? So yeah, I don't know. I would like to speak to the author. Actually, it's a very fascinating book. Maybe one day I'll try and get him on Techish to figure out like what his thesis is, basically, right? Okay, cool. Yo, everyone, that's been this week's Techish. Thank you again for listening. We'll catch you next week at TechishPod on Instagram. Watch us on YouTube. Watch us on Spotify. And subscribe to our Patreon to get the full ad-free version with an extra story. Okay, peace, everyone. Ciao.
Bye. So I was pretty... Was I shocked? I want to say I was surprised, but not super surprised because Trump seems to be running his government like a dictatorship. But Huffington Post did a piece on the White House's first ever influencer briefing.
To watch the full episode, subscribe at patreon.com/techish. You'll get access to all full-length episodes, no adverts, the chance to submit your questions into the show, and early bird discounted tickets to our live shows. Subscribe for as little as $5 a month.